Hello friends, welcome to Potho Sound, where we are all about growing our sound. My name is Andrew, and in this video, we're going to start to bring the hand-drawn UI sketch that we did in the last video to life in Photoshop as we start to create some of the basic graphic assets for our instrument in Kontakt. Now this video is going to be focused more on the graphic design side of things, which I am certainly not a total pro at or really even that good, but I feel like this is a really important step and it's a good way for me to continue developing my skills. And if you're interested in creating instruments of your own, you'll definitely want to know a little bit about graphic design to help them look nice and have a good interface to work with. So we're going to go ahead and hop into Photoshop, and I've got a couple Google Chrome tabs open that are going to help us along the way. Before we get started though, I want to just sincerely thank you for watching this video. Here we are in Photoshop, and as it turns out, I am horrible at working in Photoshop and recording, talking to you all at the same time. So I've gone ahead and done some work on the canvas here to see if everything fits, and I'll walk you through what I've got. And to start out with, our canvas here is 700 by 400, which is what we lined out in our hand-drawn sketch. I've also gone ahead and put in a 700 by 68 rectangle in here to represent the header of our Kontakt instrument, and I've selected a background photo for my instrument here, which is of my beautiful wife. Now, I should note that my wife does not sing, and she is not the one that sang all of the samples that we're going to be using, but she is gorgeous, and I do not mind looking at her being that much more inspired when I open a sound library consisting of female vocal samples. So I love my wife, and yeah, I wanted to use her picture for this. And so I went ahead and put in a series of controls. So we've got our layer 1 and our layer 2. So again, both layers are going to play back the same sample, but we'll have some extra control with each one to give a little interest and have a little more creative freedom with what the sample does. So the buttons that we have here, or the knobs rather, we're going to have pitch, we're going to have volume for that particular layer, and then we're going to have a high pass filter controls here for cutoff frequency and the resonance amount, which I realized when I did this in the notebook, the hand-drawn sketch, I wrote frequency and cutoff, but really what I meant was the frequency cutoff and then the resonance amount. So these two knobs will be for the high pass filter, and these two will be for the low cut filter, and layer 2 will be the exact same thing. I've also got the controls for the delay effect mapped out, the reverb controls here. So these are going to be some buttons and menus with some extra knobs. And then I believe I've got a background for where the waveform is going to go up here with just a little bit of a darker transparency. And then I've got all of the bypass buttons mapped out here. So I think this is going to make a really cool instrument. Again, pretty simple, but I think it looks good. The knobs and stuff we're going to get to making here in just a moment, but everything's going to work. I think this is going to fit really well. And I think the next step is, to start creating and exporting some of these graphic contents, or these graphic assets rather. And then after that, it's finally going to be Kontakt time, where we're going to open up Creator Tools, Kontakt to get a basic script going, and it's going to be great. So let me get to work on exporting some of this stuff, and I'll see you in a sec. I actually want to start the graphic assets collection for this instrument by creating the bypass buttons. And so in the clipboard, I've got a layer copied. So this is going to be bypass BTN, and the background contents we want to be transparent, and we'll go ahead and create this. And so super tiny, and what we need to do actually, so buttons in Kontakt have 6 different states, so they actually have to have 6 different animation slides. And what we want to go ahead and do is make the height of our canvas 60 pixels, so that we can have our 6 different frames on top of one another, and it's got to be evenly divided, or else the way that Kontakt displays it gets really weird. So let me paste in the little circle that I copied over. We can't really see it right now because it's on this background, but I'm going to slide this all the way up, and we're just going to simply make 6 copies of this and make sure that they are touching at the very top and bottom of one another. And then basically the idea from here is that we color them differently for the different states. So here we have the 6 circles that our bypass buttons are going to comprise of. And if I remember correctly, the way that Kontakt reads this is from top to bottom. It selects the states as to whether or not the button is on or off. It has states for when we click down on the mouse and hold the mouse down, and then it also has states for on and off when the mouse is hovered over the button. So when our button is off, so when our instrument is bypassed, I think I want the button to have like a dark gray, I think, and so we're going to want to select this first one. We're going to double click, and I'll just do color overlay. And I think that looks about right. Let me see here. I'm going to copy this hex value. So 2E, 2B, 2B. We'll click OK. And we're going to come back in here. And I'm actually going to double click this. I'm going to do color overlay. It should be the same. Yeah. Okay, so here we are. So I found a good hex value for the color, and I noticed that the opacity was not all the way up, so I do want it to be all the way up. And I think that gives us a nice contrast to what this background is going to be. So let's come back into our button file here. I'm going to double click the color overlay, paste that in, bring the opacity up, and there we go. So we're getting started. So let me get the other 4 or 5 or however many we have button slides here colored up properly, and then I will meet you with the results. All right, so I think this should work for our button. We may have to come back to this to adjust the 2 in the middle here, but we're going to go with this and see how it works. The next thing that we want to do is go ahead and hop into KnobMan to create our custom knobs, and I want to make sure that I use the same color scheme here so that it's all like a cohesive look. And I've got KnobMan pulled up right here. And what's really cool about KnobMan is that we can do a few different things. And if you've never seen KnobMan, you can Google WebKnobMan, and this will pull up. There is a library that you can view or the knob gallery rather, where you can go and look at a bunch of free to use knobs and all that. But we're going to just create our own here. And the first thing that we need to do is go into preferences, and this is where we can set the width and the height of our knob. We can select how many preview frames we want. We can select how many rendering frames, which I usually do 127 just to keep it at a familiar number. We do want the frames to be aligned vertically because Kontakt is going to read the knob as a vertical strip. And we can also set the background color of what we want our knob preview to look like. So that's really helpful because when we come over here, I can actually grab, where's the eyedropper tool? Here it is. So if we select the eyedropper tool, we can select the background color, click this little square, and see that that is what our background color is roughly. And when we bring that into WebKnobMan, we can't just paste the hex color, so we have to convert it. So let me paste this in, convert it, and we'll see that our colors, or the numbers that we need, is 110, 111, and 112. Easy enough. So 110, 111, 111, and 112. And there's our background color. So this is really helpful to help us make sure that when we start designing our knob here, that it's going to contrast properly with the background for the bulk of our instrument. And what's really nice about the way Kontakt works is that when we make the one knob, each of our knob instances are going to reference the same image file. So once we create it once, it's not like we have to copy the file, however many times, 10 different times or whatever. So this will be, an easy way to get a knob going. And if we need to change the design, we only have to export it once from KnobMan to see the change across the entire instrument here. So let me get started on a knob and we'll see how this turns out. And I actually thought it would be valuable to show you all how KnobMan works because it was really confusing to me for a little while. So let me show you some of the basics here. And as far as preview frames, we'll go with 20. So we definitely don't want that red color, but we'll adjust that here in a second. I do want the width to be a little bit wider. We'll go with 36. That looks good to me. Yeah, there we go. And then as far as the color, let's see. I think I want the default color for the knob to be that same gray that I used for the button here, kind of like this, or maybe the black. Let's just go with the gray, and we can always change it later. So select this, go into our color overlay. I'm going to grab that hex value, and we'll come back in here. So this is where we can paste the hex value for the default background. So that contrasts well enough. And what we want to do, we don't want a full circle. I want to enable the mask that just takes out that bottom bit. I kind of like this style of knob. I tend to lean towards this a lot for whatever reason. But we don't want to just leave this, because if we overlay another color on top of this, it's not going to look quite right. So we actually want this layer to disappear the higher value the knob is. And that'll make sense once we get this into Kontakt. But what we're going to do is actually animate the I believe it's the start of the knob here. So let me see if I'm correct in this here. Yeah, here we go. So what happens when we animate the start? It's this edge of the circle is the start, and we're basically telling it the very beginning we want it to be all the way, and then we rotate that around the further we go into the animation. And we're going to fill the disappeared spot with the white color. So let's go in here and make another circle, and we want that 36 width. Okay, and then we're just going to take this all the way up to white. Again, we do need that mask enabled. So here we have a knob, and we can see it in our preview frames where this is a value of 0, and this down here would be a maximum value, and this is pretty much what I want. So I'm going to do two things. I'm going to save it as a .knob to make sure that we can open up this, basically the save state again if we need to adjust the colors. And then I'm also going to export this to a .png file that we will then be able to add to what's called our resource container. So let me get this saved, and I'll meet you back in Photoshop. All right, so we're back in Photoshop, and I've actually exported a few of the graphic assets into a temporary holding folder for this particular instrument build. We've got the bypass button for our effect slots. We've got a reference image for where our controls should go or roughly go. And this is going to really help when we're trying to position our custom knobs and buttons and stuff into Kontakt. I like to do it this way so that I'm not going in blind and guessing and whatnot. I've also got the clean version here so that when our controls are in place within Kontakt, we can just swap out the background image. And then I've actually got the knob itself. So in the next video, we are actually going to go ahead and open up Kontakt and get some things in place so that we can begin to put this thing together. And we may end up putting these samples in at that point as well. Thank you so much for watching once again. I hope you've enjoyed the adventure. I will see you in the next one.